Nebraska on Tap, the source for everything educational and informational about groundwater in agriculture. If you are an ag producer or a citizen of Nebraska, this show is made for you by the Middle Republican Natural Resource District.
Now it's time for our weekly show, hosted by Heather Disming.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Nebraska on Tap. This week we have a great show going on, so we partnered with the Daugherty Food for Water Institute to talk to one of their postdoctoral research associates who is studying the economics. So before we had Sarah on, she talked to us about the program that she had, Know Your Wells. This time we're going to talk to Aakanksha about her groundwater economic studies. She has a really crazy perspective on all this stuff because she studies data so much. So she spent some time in Africa and she studied their maize production. And now we are so grateful to have her here in Nebraska to be studying about land and agriculture. So her study is in economic implications of droughts in the U.S., specifically the agricultural sectors. We all know that pertains to us here in Nebraska, where our biggest product to everybody is agriculture. She graduated first in Michigan State before coming to Nebraska, and then she again spent that time in Africa. So let's get into my interview with her. You don't want to miss this. She's got some great stuff to talk about, and it's great getting to know her. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Aakanksha. So I'm a postdoc working with the Daugherty Water for Food Institute and the National Drought Mitigation Center, both of which are a part of the University of Nebraska system. I did my PhD from Michigan State University in 2021 in agricultural economics. My work is related to applied microeconomics, or conducting research on issues around agriculture and environmental economics and economic policies. And right now, my focus is on understanding the economic implications of droughts in the United States, especially for the agricultural sector. And my most important project is related to the groundwater regulations in Nebraska and the economic impacts that they can potentially have on the farming sector.
We know all too well about that here in the Republican Valley. Like, for instance, here in the Middle Republican, we have telemetry meters, which are accurate up to 0.1 when it comes to water reading, that we have Kinsign put in. So we are on track with you when it comes to your research that you've been doing. Soon we'll probably be part of your data pool. You spent time at Michigan State studying. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and then your trip to your time in Africa?
Yeah, so I was a student at Michigan State University, and there my area of work was related to applied economics, but more towards understanding agricultural markets and food security in sub-Saharan Africa. And as a part of that, I got a chance to visit Zambia, which was the context, the case which I was studying. And it was a great time, a great opportunity for me. I happened to visit a beautiful country and get to know its people and the beautiful landscape. So my work, I spent 2 months in Zambia. And during that time, I was associated with the government of Zambia as well as local non-government organization. And their purpose was to collect national level data on the agricultural farms. It was like a census of agriculture for Zambia. Yeah, so I was associated with that project. So my job there was to, provide some subject matter support in, developing the survey instruments, training others in conducting the survey, and understanding the concerns or the constraints that are faced by the people there in conducting the survey, and then taking that training to the local people so that the people who will be actually involved in the data collection. So I involved in this entire process. And then after we trained the data collectors. We then for a month traveled all over one district or like a county or a couple of counties in Zambia, just traveling from one village to another. It was stressful at that time, but now when I look back, it was all fun. It was great experience. And the people who were working with me, they were amazing. They were so resilient, such a strong work culture to, do the best of what they want, what they are doing, be the best of what they're trying to do. So I had a great experience working there. We would travel to the villages and we would basically ensure that the process was going smoothly, that nobody is facing any problems. And if they have, concerns relating to, say, access to water or access to food when they're in the field, we would help them with that. We would help, because we have more we had more mobility with moving around. And if they had any concerns with the quality of the data that was being collected, we would monitor that. We would make sure that all of that was going well. So yeah, that was basically my work, which was 2 months that I spent in Zambia.
Yeah. And how did this data end up helping the farmers in Zambia after you guys collected it and took it back and analyzed it?
Yeah, so this data is part of an ongoing data collection since several years, because it's like a census of agriculture, So it has been used in numerous studies. I conducted my own dissertation based on this data, and so all of these studies are basically to inform the agricultural sector of Zambia. In my particular work, I studied the maize markets, so the corn markets in Zambia, and which is like the most important crop for Zambians. It is their staple crop. So most farmers in Zambia grow corn. Typical variety of corn, it is white, not yellow. So I wanted to see if when farmers are liquidity constrained, when they do not have access to cash, or they have some constraints in the amount of cash they can use to buy inputs for their agriculture practices, which means like, seed or fertilizer, good quality fertilizer from the market, how does that affect their ability to sell corn in the market and to take advantage of some of the government schemes that provides higher assured prices to the farmers. And I found that farmers who have constraints in accessing cash for, their agricultural activities, they actually end up producing less and thus selling less, because most of these farmers are dependent on what they grow on their farm for meeting their own consumption needs. So basically they will be first using their production for feeding their own family, and whatever is left over will be what they will be able to sell. So often farmers don't have enough left over, so they're not able to sell anything. And if they are able to sell anything, it is so small that they would rather sell it within their community to somebody who, say, shows up to their house and just they're able to just sell it off, rather than going to the the village headquarter or the district headquarter and then accessing the government agency there and being able to sell that. So that is what I found, that there are constraints at the production level, and until those are not addressed, a government intervention at the marketing level may only be benefiting those who have larger farms or have more access to these inputs.
Yeah, and then you flip it over here to America, where they do have the larger farms and they do have the bigger inputs, and they have all the crazy hybrid seed they could ever think of coming at them that's been tested, in a lab in Ames, Iowa. Is that interesting to see the difference in like a government helping a farmer out versus one, that's kind of trying to figure out how to help the farmer out?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, but also in a way, there are problems with every system, and there are challenges, and the challenges may be different, but there are challenges everywhere. And in all the contexts, work of people like me is to be able to clear the clutter in a way. There's so much confusion about what's happening where, and to be able to give a more objective and clearer picture of, okay, let's think about this from an economic framework. Let's put a structure into all this messy problem. So it was very interesting to learn about the different challenges of agriculture in the United States, where the problem so much may not be in terms of whether farmers have access to the inputs or like the size of the farm or the amount of output they are producing, but rather that how the resources can be used in a way so that they're able to generate a healthy economy today, but also to be able to continue doing that into the future, which, for Nebraska or other states in the Western United States is a concern related to water, because
Correct.
a lot of the farming sector is dependent on water to support the farming sector. It is in semi-arid area and may not always receive rainfall. So it was a very different context, but very interesting to learn about.
Here, anybody can access the aquifer levels and see where the aquifer has dropped. And to get us out of Nebraska for a little bit, you look at southwest Kansas, for instance, and whoa, now farms are having to go to dry land.
Yeah.
So what made you choose Nebraska, or did Nebraska choose you?
I think it was a two-way road there.
Okay.
I had the opportunity of interviewing with the scholars here at University of Nebraska, and they had a lot of exciting work being done on water and the use of water for irrigation in agriculture. That in itself, I think, was a very interesting area of work. I had not worked on it before, but what they needed from me was specifically some expertise in using data and using data to inform research. And that is where, my skills matched with what they needed. And I wanted to, be able to contribute to my skills to a very interesting topic, which is related to a natural resource, so important like water. Like, there is no doubt we will be always needing water for our survival. So I thought that was very interesting. And I was also interested in improving my skills in using data to inform research, because as we know, we are living in an age of data. We want to make the best use of the information around us to inform all our decisions. And so that was my motivation in joining this position, and the people at the institute here were interested in using my skills to help with their research work. So I think it was a good match.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and I'm so glad it worked out. Welcome to Nebraska. The weather doesn't know what's going on, and sometimes neither do we.
At least it's sunny here.
I know, right? Is Michigan not very sunny?
No, not during the winter.
Oh,
it's
no.
almost like 3 months of no sun, which I hate. Which I love. I love the winters of Nebraska compared to Michigan. I love it here because it's sunny in the winters.
I know. The sun always was like, okay, let's get out and do something. It's sunny.
Yeah.
Let's get wild. Then the wind's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this water conservation economics that you are looking at now at the Daugherty Water Center, using that groundwater in drier areas, we kind of talked about that in western Nebraska and the western states. How does the economics that you've studied deal with the drought patterns and the value that land receives because of these drought patterns?
What I try to do in my research, or other researchers, what we try to do using our expertise in economics, is to understand how droughts may impact people who are dependent on agriculture for their economic well-being, basically. Right. Or in general, trying to understand what would be the economic implications of drought. And because my work is primarily related to agriculture, that is where I'm focused on. So we try to, first of all, think about it from an, economic perspective, like using our skills, our knowledge about economics to walk through the different channels of how drought may impact the economy. First of all, it's very straightforward to think that, a drought may have an impact on crop yields, and so may impact the farmer due to a loss in their crop yields, and so their revenue, right? But the other thing way of thinking about it could be that farmers may adapt to drought by adopting more irrigation or by changing the crop choice, or some other formats of some institutional change. The government may bring in some subsidy, some kind of support, a disaster relief. So we try to think about all of those different aspects. Those are the different aspects that we explore. First of all, we try to think about those different aspects, and we generate what we call hypothesis about, okay, this might happen, case 1, case 2, case 3. And then we use data or information through some sources to test about what really is happening. Is this scenario being played out, or scenario 2 being played out? So that's broader picture, I guess.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's a great answer. I mean, because when you do work in economics, it's a lot of math and a lot of sorting and categorizing. But like you said, using 2 different or 3 different scenarios, whatever you guys decide to, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because drought patterns either persist or sometimes they change, and depends on Mrs. El Nino or Mr. El Nino right now. Do you study some other aquifers in the U.S. and kind of compare them to the stress on them compared to the stress on the Ogallala that's here in Nebraska?
I do not in my work, but there are certainly many other researchers within the University of Nebraska who do that. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, I can talk about my work related to the groundwater regulations in Nebraska, which is like the most important project that I have been involved in.
Okay.
So when I first joined the institute, I was really intrigued by the local governance structure in Nebraska. It's something that I had never seen or heard of, especially because my work is related to, was related to the sub-Saharan Africa, where we did not learn so much about the local institutions, or there were fewer local institutions for that matter. I was really intrigued and very interested that there are the natural resources districts, which, in a way manage their own natural resources. So I got interested in that, and I started learning more about what is happening within the NRDs. And that got me to, learning about the groundwater regulations and, of course, the conflicts that happened between Kansas and Nebraska and Colorado related to the Republican River, which was like, a lot of news about that. So that got me just learning about how Nebraska, tackled with that entire scenario, and how its governance goes back into the 1960s and 70s, which was, just fascinating for me. And what I did was that I studied the policy documents of all the NRDs, and then I had conversations with researchers who have worked on these regulations for several years. Dr. Dave Eichen was one of the person that I talked with. And then I talked with the NRD leaders, some of them, just to, kind of understand with what is happening within the NRDs. And I got a lot of interesting information about what's going on. So what I ended up doing was that I tracked the evolution of the regulations within Nebraska, and I'm now working on compiling them to be able to share them with like a wider audience. That I think would be very useful for other regions which are only now beginning to develop their groundwater regulations, especially looking at California, which is still in the process of developing its groundwater regulations. So, the point I'm trying to make here is that in Nebraska, the regulations and the framework for creating these regulations have been in place since the 1970s.
Yes.
And it takes a long time. It's a process of, that involves the local people, the people who are dependent on the groundwater, the political leaders, the local leaders. It involves a lot of stakeholders to come to a decision about what kind of regulations can and cannot be placed. So it's not something that can happen overnight. So that's the kind of one of the aspect of my work is that, and that's, I think, very interesting, and I've been really excited by what I've been able to get there. The other thing that I've tried to do with that is look at how these regulations have changed land values, and or if or not they have had any impact on land values. And what I did find was that irrigated farms don't seem to have any change following a groundwater regulation, be it well moratorium or water allocations. They don't seem to change in land value. But non-irrigated farms, dryland farms, when there is a well moratorium placed on them, I found a 9% decrease in their land values. Yeah, I'm still trying to explore what's going on there. So that's a work in progress, but one of the most important projects that I've been part of.
All your work seems to be extremely fascinating, and I hope that you make some really crazy headway when it comes to diving into the question that arises around of non-irrigated farmland and how all that works. And I know that the NRDs are something very unique to Nebraska that other states don't have, whether they all work together sometimes or not so much, depending on the personality. I mean, they do make a difference.
I would just add that, I'm just one person who works within like the Daugherty Water for Food and the National Drought Mitigation Center. There is a plethora of interesting work being done at the Institute. And I think if you would want to know more about some of the work that we do here, I would be just more than happy to put you in touch with the other researchers who work here.
Just wants to see all the research. They can also visit the website too to check in on all the cool stuff that's going on at the Daugherty Water Institute there in Lincoln.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Heather. It was so nice talking to you.
Yes. Again, thank you so much, Anashka, for coming on to the show this week and talking to us about all the knowledge that you have on everything that you've been studying, from agriculture in Nebraska to agriculture in Africa. So again, please remember to like and subscribe. You can go to our www.nebraskaontap.com page and you can check out some of the stuff we have there. And then you can go to our YouTube page and like and subscribe us, Spotify, Apple Podcast. We would love to keep in contact with you because we hope we have some great information going out there, and we want to get everybody involved in the education aspect. So I hope everybody has a great week. Stay warm, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.